It had been a routine evening. I had worked the evening shift at my retail job at the mall. School was finally over for the year, so I was now able to work full time. I was walking to my car in the parking lot, planning on heading to my boyfriend's, when everything went black. It took me a moment to understand exactly what had happened. You freeze when you can't see, and your brain freezes as well. Later, I realized that two men? I think they were men. Anyway, whatever. They came up behind me as I was approaching my car. I had my earbuds in, so I didn't hear them, and they threw a dark blanket or tarp over me, blinding me, before bundling me into a nearby van. A white van. I was tossed onto the hard metallic floor like I was a bag of trash. Then something pricked my left arm, and everything really did go black. They, whoever they were, had injected me with something that made me pass out. I don't know how long I was unconscious, but it may have been as long as several hours. It was still dark when I finally came to. I was groggy, but at least I could see. I felt cold. It was cold. And then I realized I was naked. I was lying on the hard ground in what appeared to be a clearing in the woods. There was a blazing bonfire, the glare of which made it difficult to see, but I could make out the trunks of the surrounding trees. And people. People who appeared to be wearing hooded robes? They were chanting something in a language I couldn't understand, a language which sounded like no other language I had ever heard before. And a thought flashed into my head. Was it even human? Human speech? Suddenly, two hooded figures stepped forward and grabbed my arms, holding each in a vice-like grip. For an instant, I thought they were going to throw me onto the bonfire, and I think I screamed. But that's not what they intended. Instead, they forced me to turn around and look. And there it was, a simple wooden cabinet, like one for storing clothes. Just an old antique cabinet, its dark wood glowing red in the firelight. The hooded figures at my side pulled my hair, pulled back my head, forced me to stare at it. Behind me, the chanting rose to a crescendo, and then stopped dead. The two hooded figures released my arms and stepped away, but I kept my eyes on the cabinet. I just couldn't tear them away. A hand, a thin, skeletal, grayish-green hand, just a hand, seemed to materialize out of the darkness above the cabinet. For a moment, it hung in the night air, then dropped, with a plop, onto the top of the old antique. It lay there for a moment, but then scuttled to the edge, and, after halting momentarily, began to crawl down the front of the cabinet, as if it was a strange, gray-green bat. I stared at it in horrified fascination until the hand reached the knobs of the cabinet doors and began to open the one on the left. The door swung open, and I was on my feet, running. I didn't want to see whatever was going to emerge. Neither did the hooded figures, who had all disappeared. But then I made a mistake. I looked back. A grayish-green swirling mist emanated from the interior of the cabinet and began to coalesce into a dark mass with eyes, eyes, hundreds of eyes, thousands of eyes, thousands of glowing eyes, and tentacles, whip-like tentacles, which reached out for me. I ran then, really ran. In the darkness I ran into trees and was scratched by branches. Several times I tripped over stones or tree roots and nearly fell flat on my face. But each time I looked back, and I kept looking back, I couldn't seem to stop myself. I saw the woods filling with mist, grayish-green mist, and with eyes, eyes, hundreds of eyes, thousands of eyes, glowing whitely in the darkness. I was in full panic mode and might have run all night. But turning into a route path in my attempt to flee, I suddenly collided with a person. I shrank back, thinking it was one of the hooded ones, but instead it turned out to be a young man in dark clothing. "Quickly, this way," he said, taking my hand and dragging me down the trail. I didn't hesitate, didn't think, just ran with him, wanting to get away from that thing, and grateful for the help of what appeared to be a normal human being. I didn't even think about the fact I was completely naked, and in the presence of a young man I didn't know. I must have looked a sight. We ran for what seemed an eternity, but was probably less than 10 minutes. Behind us, the benighted forest seemed to fill with the sound of chanting, and with a strange musical piping, which sent chills down my bare back. We finally came to a stop in an empty field, away from the trees. When I was finally able to get my voice back, I croaked out, "What? Who were those people?" "They're a cult," the young man said in his nicely modulated voice. "They worship a race of elder beings who came from the stars and settled the earth, creating us, human life, in the process. But these old ones also created other things, and you just saw one of them, a Shoggoth, a mass of protoplasm capable of changing shape, and which can destroy by rending, tearing, and absorbing the life energy of any living entity it chooses to victimize." I was stunned to learn of such things, and that there were people that worshipped them. Oh my God," I sputtered. "He had nothing to do with it." But who are you?" I said, my heart swelling in gratitude towards my Savior. "Me? Oh, I'm a Shoggoth. We can take human form too, you know." I watched in amazement as the features of the pleasant-looking young man began to shift and fade, then dissolve into a mass of grayish-green mist, ethereal but also substantial, and covered with eyes, hundreds of eyes, thousands, which glowed in the surrounding gloom. And then tentacles whipped around me, and I felt my body being torn apart, then liquefying as I screamed and screamed and screamed. And then I was dead. The moral of the story: never trust anyone you meet when you're only wearing your birthday suit. Alternate ending. We finally came to a stop in an empty field away from the trees. A ripe full moon was rising in the night sky, and I began to feel its effects. What? Who were those people? I grunted. They're a cult, the young man said in his nicely modulated voice. They worship a race of elder beings who came from the stars and settled the earth, creating us, human life, in the process. But these old ones also created other things, and you just saw one of them. A Shoggoth. A Shoggoth. A mass of protoplasm capable of changing shape, and which can destroy by rending, tearing, and absorbing the life energy of any living entity it chooses to victimize. The changes were now firmly taking hold. Oh my God, I sputtered. He had nothing to do with it. But, who? You, I croaked. Me? Oh, I'm a Shoggoth. We can take human form too, you know. But as he spoke, I leapt towards him and tore out his throat, then ripped off his head. You see, he may have been a Shoggoth, but I'm a werewolf. The moral of the story? Never trust anyone you meet who is only wearing their birthday suit. If this is your first visit to my channel, please consider subscribing. My name is Warren, and I write and tell original ghost stories and original horror stories featuring such cryptids as the Night Floaters, werewolves, and the Black-Eyed Children. So again, please consider subscribing. Please help me to reach my goal of 2,021 subs in 2021. Till midnight. Cheers. Pictures used in today's video, courtesy of Pix Here, that's PX Here, while the music was the bone-chilling Ice Demoned by that patron of the internet, Kevin MacLeod.